Greetings, everybody. My name is Sanjiv Venkatram, and welcome to another edition of User Delight with Microsoft Technology. In this episode, we'll look at how to manage documents in a SharePoint document library using Power Apps and Power Automate. So let's head on over to Power Apps to begin the journey. Thank you very much.
Right. So basically, the starting point is going to be a site, a SharePoint site like so, right? And if you don't have a site, you go in, you create a site, and you create a team site, and then you could use any of these templates here. I'm not terribly sure in the enterprise context is if everybody would be able to do this, but your IT folk for sure should be able to do this and give you and point you to a site, right? So you would have your standard team template. If I were to use a template, give it a name, call it documents manager, whatever the site is, right? And then you would go, and that gives you the site address over here. So prudentia.com is basically the address, sites is the container, and this is the name of the site, right? And then I can basically go call out the sensitivity of data, privacy settings, only members, or anyone within the organization. As an example, the ministry can actually go access this, and then you create a site. That's how simple this is, right? I'm not going to create a site because the site exists over here. So I'm going to go to, let us say, one of those sites. Let me just say here, document management, right? So this is the one that I had from before. So if I get into the site, you will see the first thing you do here is on the left-hand side, you see that there is a documents folder, right? So if I click on the documents folder, it goes away and brings me to this what looks like a table into which I can upload documents, and I can actually add folders as well. So what I would say from an enterprise context, and especially let us say from your department context, would be to organize these folders based on sub-business units or functions or so on and so forth. As an example, if you're, let us say, in the legal function, you would go in and add a folder called legal, but then legal folks are spread between many different business units. They have many different matters to actually deal with. So you could actually have folders underneath folders. So you call this folder functionally as legal. And within the legal business unit, you can actually have legal folder. You can have sub business units depending on the matters that you actually deal with. The idea is to give granular controls to people so that information is contained within that particular matter, and only on a need to know basis they can go in and access those folders. That's the whole point. That's the security setup, if you will, right? Now, clearly, you don't want people coming here and operating from here directly. So what you would do is you would put an interface on top of it, which would actually be in Power Apps, right? So to upload or remove documents, you would actually use an interface to this. So this becomes more of the data repository in the background. As an example, if I go to my Power Apps, I have one from before. So if I go up here, I'm going to close this flow. It could look something like this, where if I play this, I can go ahead and attach a particular document, and it would go save it in this particular library. And it just depends on which folder you want to access, so on and so forth. So you would have layers of security built in. You would have a few buttons as an example for business units, and depending on who is actually logged in, that person could go in and access only the tables relevant to that particular folder. So this table is relevant to the folder to which the person actually has got access. So let me just demo this. So if I were to attach a file here, I'm going to pick some file, let's say this file. And then if I were to add this item, this goes away, and then the flow would add the item. And if I were to hit refresh here, you will see that this item has actually been added. And if I want to remove this item, I click on it, I click on remove, and it goes away and removes that particular item. So you have an elegant way of managing documents, right? So let's actually do the same. So I'm going to go to my Power Apps here. And one more thing. I would also create a dummy list. A list is nothing more than a table. So if I were to click on home and go to new and click on list, this gives me the ability to actually create a table. So I'm going to create a blank table, call it documents or whatever it is, and then go create it. I'm not going to create one because I already have a list here. So if I go to site contents, I have a test list over here. And I'll tell you the reason why you need that list shortly, right? So I go back to my Power Apps, and here I'm going to go to add data here and going to go connect to the SharePoint list. So I'm going to type SharePoint here and then go to the dark green S over here. This is my SharePoint reference. So control. So I'm going to select this, select my email ID, and then I go enter the URL of the SharePoint list. So there is my URL. Here is the name of my site, and this is my site control, and that's my address. So I copy this, I go away, I paste it here and go connect to it, and you will see that my folder has come through, and if there are subfolders, that will come through as well. And then you basically have your list, right? So I'm going to go connect to this. So this goes away and connects to it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go insert a data table, because data tables are like Excel, a nice little table. So I'm going to click on this data table. I'm going to move it down like so over here, make it full screen, rename this as, let us say, SD, because it belongs to the screen docs screen. So usually when you add a screen, it comes in with a screen number. And the best thing to do is to rename this so that you can understand SCN is short form for screen, and docs is basically what this is actually doing. So once we have the table here, I'm going to go connect to the document library right there, just like your SharePoint list. The document library as well comes in. So this goes away and loads all the columns. Now there are too many columns here. I don't need this. So let me actually go away. I need, created by. So I don't need the compliance ID. I need created. I don't need for now the modified and modified by. I'm going to remove that. Things like color tag. I mean, if you need the document to be sensitive, you can also have the sensitivity description, title, if you will. You can have all these. But then for now, I'm just going to get in all of this, I'm going to go get the file name. I need the file name. I need the ID. Okay, so these are the only two things I need here. So I'm going to add these like so. I'm going to put the ID right up front. I'm going to put the file name next, and then who it was created by and when it was created. Only these four things for now, right? So I have my repository here done. So in order for me to actually get the attachment control, I'm going to cheat a little. I'm going to go insert an edit form. And in this edit form, I'm going to connect to this list, right? I'm going to connect to this list. And when I connect to the list, this goes away and actually gives me, right? Gives me the fields. I'm going to edit field, add, and I'm going to go select the attachment control. So once I add the attachment control, this comes in like so, right? So now what I do is I open up the form, I unlock this attachment data card, unlock it, and then inside I can see the data card value that is the actual attachment control. So I'm going to select this, copy this, and I'm going to paste it outside like so. I'm going to paste it outside. I'm going to make it smaller here and put it over there. Now I don't need the form anymore, so I'm going to go delete this. See, I've got the attachment control. So I'm going to call it attach. The reason why I'm doing this is I'm not terribly sure if the control, this attachment is available by itself. So if I search for it, if I say attach, see there is nothing, there is no attachment control that I can actually insert. So I have to cheat to get this. So it's got some errors over here that are pointing to the form. So I'm going to remove all of this here. Remove this. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Undo this. Thankfully in Power Apps 2 there's an undo button like everything else in Microsoft. So remove all these like so. Display mode. Yeah, so now my attachment control is standalone, right? So I'm going to make this smaller. So I can put the control in the center like that. I'm going to call this attach underscore SD maybe just to be pure. And now my attachment is all set and my data store here is all set, right? So what I need to do, and if I preview this, I can go ahead and attach a particular file like so. You see, I can attach a particular file, right? Or many files. So once this is actually set up, I'm going to invoke a Power Automate flow to be able to take this attachment and then land it into my documents library. So for that, I have the Power Automate control right here. And if I click this, I can remove this. Let me just remove it. Let us restart. I can create a flow from inside a Power Apps, which is nothing more than what is called as an instant flow. It's a button click flow. So I'm going to say create a new item. So create it from blank. I don't want to use a template in this case. So create it from blank. So the starting point, obviously, because we are starting from Power Apps, is going to be the Power Apps control, right? So I'm going to click on Power Apps here. I'm going to add an input. And what input do I need? I need a file, right? So I'm going to say click on File here. So it adds a variable called file content. And once I get the input from my Power Apps, I'm going to add a new step here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a file, right? I'm going to create a file here. So in SharePoint, right? So in the documents library, so I'm going to actually click on create file. This is much like creating an item in your SharePoint list. The same thing, except in this case, it's a file, right? So the address is going to actually pop up like so, document management. In case it doesn't, you can actually go to custom value and cut and paste the list as well. That would work as well, right? So the first time when you're doing this, if the list is new, you won't see it here in the list, and then you do custom value and cut and paste the URL of the site. So I'm going to select document management over here. It shows me my folder path, right? So I'm going to click on this here, and it shows me my, if I scroll down, it shows me my documents folder. So if I click on this, it goes away and says /shared documents. You can make this dynamic by passing it from over here. You can actually add another input, a text input, and then pass the path to this shared folder, right? And that would depend on the user as to where the user wants to actually store that document, right? So you can make this dynamic. You don't necessarily need to hard code it like I have done so. Then in the file content over here, if I were to click on file content, it'll show me in IntelliSense the file content. So I'm going to click on this guy. So if I click on this guy, you will actually see that the file content has 1, 2, 3 components. Trigger body refers to the triggering mechanism of the flow. Then there is a container called as file, and the file basically has a property called content bytes, right? So that is an important reference for me. So if I go to if I go to file name, I'm going to put down file content here as well. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go up and click on, my expression here, and then in the file content, I'm just going to point to my file content like so. From the expression, I'm going to, let me see if I can do that. File content, maybe what I could do is I could go to expression, let us say trigger body, and in the trigger body, maybe click on file content. There you go. So it gives me, you see, the moment I'm going to redo this, maybe I went a little too fast here, right? So if I were to go to expression, I'm not able to select this file content here, isn't it? But if I were to say trigger body, because if I hover on this, you see, I see the trigger body, right? I see the trigger body. So I'm going to add trigger body, but I'm not going to pass anything into this. I'm going to keep it as a ghost function, if you will. Go to dynamic content. Then it shows me my file content over here. And then I'm going to remove this trigger body so that, gives me the original reference. But instead of content bytes, I'm going to actually say name here. Okay, I'm going to actually say name. And I'm going to click on OK. So it now gives me the trigger body reference to the name. So one, I have the content bytes, and in the other, I've got the name. Okay, so I've got these two identical ones, the file property referring here to the actual content and the bytes within the content, and then over here it is referring to the name. So I've got the second step now done. Okay, now the last step here is going to be, once the file is actually added, I'm going to send a variable back to my Power Apps to say the file has actually been uploaded. So if I were to say Power Apps over here, it shows me respond back to Power Apps or Flow as an action here. So I'm going to click on this and then add an output. I'm going to add a text output. I'm going to call it var upload, and then I'm just going to say yes. Once that action is done, it should come back to me and say, yes, the file has actually been uploaded. So I'm going to call this flow doc uploader, and I'm going to make it one word because I don't want to add, the apostrophes and so on and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to go ahead and actually save this, right? So this is getting saved, and it should go back right into my Power Apps like so. So it goes back into Power Apps. So my, what do you call this? The flow is all set. Just for, I'm a little paranoid, I'm going to refresh this to make sure that everything is hunky-dory. And there you go. So now I'm going to go insert a button, right? I'll insert a button up here like so. I'll call this upload file, and I'm going to go back to my tree view and then rename the button as well. Call it btn upload underscore sd. There could be multiple screens. So I say upload, and here I'm going to call on my flow, the flow doc uploader, right? So out here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say flow uploader, right? Dot run. And then when I open the bracket, it's asking me for the file reference. And remember, the file, if I were to click on a file, it says it is a record. Why is it a record? Basically, it's got two components, the name as well as the content bytes. So again, I need to, because it is a record, I need to open up a curly brace. Then I need to pass the name. I'll say name. So the name of this is going to be the name of this particular attachment here, right? And whenever you attach something, it comes in as a table, right? Literally as a table of files. What I need here is the first item. So I'm going to say first, the first item of what? Of the attachment control, right? Of this attachment control. So I'm going to actually say attach SD. So that is my control. So it's pointing to this control. In this control, if I do a dot, I see all the properties like the border color, so on and so forth. But I also have the attachment controls here. So I'm going to select attachments. And when I close the bracket, remember there is name and content bytes, right? So if I do the dot over here, I can actually drill down to the name. So that gives me the file name. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually get the content bytes, right? This I have to type the content bytes, and then I'm going to basically say first and then open the bracket, and I need my attachment control, attachment SD dot the attachments is the property. And then when I close the bracket, in that particular line item, I need the value. The value is what actually has the actual bytes of the file. Okay. So now I'm going to close this particular, how do you say, curly brace, and then I'm going to close the curly brace to the file. So that should take the entire what do you call this, reference, and then I'm going to close, let us say, the I'm going to close the bracket to the uploader. It still says there is actually an issue here. It says missing column reference for the blob. So what could actually happen in this case is that if I go back to the flow, I'll go back to the flow here, edit the flow, and what probably is happening here is that in the create file, there you go. The file name is right there. Okay, so this seems fine. So file name and then the content bytes, both are okay. So I don't see any issue. Um, let me let me refresh this once more. Let me refresh. Ah, I know what's going on. It is content bytes here. I said bytes, content bytes. So there you go. So now if I run this flow, it's actually going to go and submit the file to the document library. The only thing is the response from this flow, I want to capture it in the variable. So, you will see it shortly. Okay, so I'm going to basically say set, and I'm going to add a variable here called variable doc upload, doc upload, right? I'm going to call it variable doc upload, and then I'm going to actually say give me, whoops, in this flow, give me the var upload property, and this var upload property, which is a yes, is going to go into this var upload. Okay, so I'm going to set this var upload property to be the response back from the flow if it is actually uploaded the document, yes or no. Okay, so that's going to be my last step. So I'm ready to go right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert, let us say, a refresh icon. So here's a globe refresh over here. So I'm going to put this right next to it, maybe make the upload file a little bigger like so. And the idea here is when the action is done, this should literally, become alive. This should become enabled. I'm going to disable it right now so that once the file is actually uploaded, it becomes enabled. I click it, I can see the file here. Let me do this. You'll understand what I'm trying to do, right? I'm going to go to on select. I'm going to say refresh my documents library. And then I'm going to go to the display mode property. I'm going to go to display mode property. Right now it is edit, which means to say I can see it. But I'm going to say if the var doc upload is equal to yes, then if it is equal to yes, then show it to me as enabled. Otherwise, actually, display mode dot disabled, it should be disabled. See, it should be disabled right now. So if the person doesn't click on upload, it should be disabled. If the person uploads it, then it comes back alive and I click it to actually see the file. Okay. So now I'm going to play the zap. I'm going to preview the zap. I've got already something. I'm paranoid. Let me actually attach another time. So I'm going to select any file here, open this. So there you go. And I'm going to go ahead and actually upload this file. So once it is uploaded, it kind of refreshes. Now note that the user does not have access to SharePoint. Okay, so the user doesn't know where you're storing it. So the user will not be able to get into SharePoint to see if the file has been uploaded or not, right? The only way to see it is if I were to refresh this, this should go away and show me the fact that there is a file here, okay? And if I were to go over to my documents library, and you will actually see that there is a file that has actually been uploaded here, right? So if I go back to my, Power Apps here, what I could also do is basically add another, what do you call this? A button to show me the link to this particular file. So then what it's going to do is it's going to actually open up the link and then you can literally see the file and so on and so forth. Let me see if I can actually do that. I am going to go over to another button. So where is my button here? I'm going to go to another button and then I'm going to just make it bigger like so, and I'm going to actually say view file, and in the view file I'm going to basically say btn underscore btn view underscore sd. See, I need AI to SD. And the idea is, and in the interest of time, maybe I'll just copy it from the other one. So if I go to this other app, this is what I'm talking about. I'm just going to go to view and I'm going to actually view the link to the item, right? That's, go up here. I just noticed that my data table name is different. So I'm going to actually say on select launch a website, and this is going to be data table sd dot selected dot link to item. Okay, so if I were to play this right now, I have this item selected and view the file. It is actually literally going to go and view the particular file, right? So I'm going to close this. And then you can add another button to remove this item as well. That is also pretty straightforward. So Control C, Control V. I'm going to put a button there. I'm going to call this view button here called remove. Remove, and this is common. Many of you would have actually seen this. And then I'm going to basically say remove if from where, from documents, and then I'll set the ID to be equal to data table dot selected, is the property dot the ID property, right? And then that'll be able to remove any particular file. So if I go ahead, I'm going to actually attach another file here. Let us say this one, open it, and then upload this file. So this gets uploaded, refresh it again. So there is it. And if I click on this, if I want to remove it, and I should rename this, I'll rename it as remove file, and then play this. If I click on this, the file will get removed. Okay, I trust this kind of gives you an idea of doing the 360 of checking a file in, viewing it, and actually removing it from whichever library you deem the file belongs to based on the security profile of the users actually logged into this particular application.